So welcome to the third of the sessions in the Skills and Learning session of this year's GSE UK conference. I'm delighted to welcome an old friend of mine, Michael Carey from Letterkenny University, to speak to you this morning. Before I hand over to Michael, just a couple of items of housekeeping I'm sure you're probably all very familiar with now. You will be on mute throughout the session. If you have any questions, please use the chat window. We will deal with the questions right at the end. Unless there's something urgent that crops up, somebody can't hear or they can't see, then please let me know. I can interrupt Michael if necessary. Can I remind you also, it's really valuable for the speaker to get some feedback after the session. This is session 6AF. You can find the little QR code in your agenda, and Michael will show you where you can also find that from the main agenda right at the end of this session. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Michael Carey. So Michael, all yours.
Hello, good morning everybody. I think this is as near to Ireland as everybody's going to get during this GSC event. I'm calling you from the northwest region of Ireland. It's geographically in the northwest, it's politically in the south of Ireland, but we're from a county called Donegal, and that's where I now reside with my third level institute. And I want to really get at the point during this session this morning that how easy and how exciting and how interesting this whole mainframe environment is. And I still find it that way after so many years of working in it. So without further ado, no skills required for this morning session. And by the way, good luck to the US election people on this one. You're probably sharing that screen with yourself at the moment and getting a laugh or two there, but we'll talk mainframe. We'll look at the fun in getting to and learning as much as we can about this mainframe. I work in the third level institute. It's an institute here in Ireland. We're now turning into a technological university that'll be where we're merging with a number of other institutes. That's all happening at the moment as I speak. Folks, it's hard to believe, 43 years in computing. I accidentally got into computing because my family had a business. My mother didn't want me working in the family business, and one of the guys that fixed our casino machines brought me into his night class in Derry, Londonderry. We're quite close to Northern Ireland here. And I walked into a HND in computer studies room. They needed 6 people to run that HND in computer studies. I was the 6th. I was 16 years of age, 2 years too young. I had not the entry qualifications. I got a pass in mathematics, and I was completely the wrong guy to be there. But it worked for me, folks. I went into that class and I loved everything about the mainframe. In fact, it was back then that I punched my first card, referring to you to the first line on this PowerPoint here. In '76, I did punch my first card. In fact, I remember my first COBOL program. There was about 300 cards, as I called it, in that program, and we were on the 3rd floor of our college, and we had a really funny systems operator, and he took my cards and he threw them out the window, and they all fell down into the police station, which was right adjacent to our college, and I had to go all the way down here and gather up those cards, put them in sequence again, and put them all into my card reader to get my assignment out for my HND final studies there. So great memories there. Then I moved on to '79. My first trainee programmer job was working on an ICL 2903 mainframe computer. Me, the systems analyst, he wrote the specs out, fired them across the table to me. I did the coding on coding sheets, passed them in through the hatch into the computer room, and 2 hours later they sent me back a listing with about 5,000 syntax errors, which I had to work my way through. So that was 1979, a lot of fun there. I then moved into System 38s in the year 1980. Then from 81 to 85, I was back in Galway, would you believe it? Just like the Ed Sheeran song, The Galway Girl. And I fell in love with just about everything in Galway, including the mainframe. I was an analyst programmer. I got introduced to Kix, and I just loved the environment. I loved the mainframe. I enjoyed going to work every morning and the fun and the music that Galway had to offer. So a lot of good things happened then, wonderful memories of those years. Then from 86 to 2000, I kind of jumped around the System 34s, 36s, 38s and RISC boxes because that's the way Ireland was moving at that point in time. They were getting into the mini computer end of things, but the mainframes were still churning away in the background. Then, strangely enough, on the last line here, in 2000, and I can thank my wife for this one, she was kind of fed up with me running around the country in high pressure jobs, earning lots of money, but family life was suffering, and she'd said, why not be a teacher? And I said, I don't have the qualifications. So I went back to Open University and did my BSc honours degree, and I did what I had to do. And folks, I can gladly say that on the last line here, I mean every word of it. I've had the best 20 years of my life. Well paid. I'm a happy camper, and I've had complete job security even through this whole COVID dilemma, which we're all going through at the moment. Briefly, the milestones for us, where Ireland is absolutely minuscule as far as mainframe sites goes in comparison to the UK. That's a fact. Looking at the chart here, 2003, Prudential Financials came to our small town here in Letterkenny. They beat down our door and said, we use mainframes and we can't get them in the States. What can you do here? This is where the mainframe trick comes in my previous slide title. They came to our computing department, and I was a part-time lecturer in the business studies department because they gave me some part-time hours, and they asked 45 computing lecturers would they teach mainframe, and nobody would teach mainframe. They said that's dead in the water. We're Java people, we're Prolog, we're into AI, we're into the real stuff. And they went to the government, and the government put pressure on our college and said this company's not going to set up unless you do some training for them and train their people. So I jumped in, and I think the big lesson here, folks, is don't step over work when it comes your way and opportunities. Lift it up and run with it, because you just don't know where it's going to lead. I took that challenge, and that's where my 20 best years have come from in my life, and I'm loving every minute of it, folks, and it's getting better, would you believe it? The next milestone was, for the first year we ran mainframe, we had to pay IBM for the service. That's the year one reference in the college and the currency symbols. We had to pay 50 to 60k punts at the time to have a mainframe in the class, because we had to. That's what Prudential wanted. Year two, thankfully, IBM came along with the System Z academic initiative, and they provided that mainframe free and have been doing that for the last 15, 16 years. So a big thank you to IBM on that one. And Zoos, I love you. There's no doubt about that. We've trained at least 300 people, and they are all mainframers, and they're all out there, and they talk to me regularly about the lives that they were given that they didn't realize they would get. 5 years ago was a big thing for me. We went completely online with our mainframe teaching. People said it couldn't be done. You can't teach programming remotely. That's not true. The beauty about Zoo is that I see everybody's work. So if you're stuck out there, I pop in and look at your materials and look at your programs and look at your outputs and run your programs, and I see what you're seeing. So we do it together. So that's the beauty about Zoo is I'm able to see everybody's work. It's beautiful. But sounding a bit like Trump here, actually. So we went online delivery. Then along came General Motors. Well, they've always been in Ireland, but they've moved a lot of their mainframe centres to Ireland. They tendered for a lot of projects, and they got them because the States were struggling with building up relationships with the institutes and universities close to their manufacturing operations, and their mainframe people were getting elderly and close to retirement. So Ireland won a lot of the contracts, brought them to Ireland. They've been a very strong supporter of our mainframe course, both for sysprogs, which are systems programmers, and for the application developers. Those tends to be the two main splits as far as mainframe goes. You either take the code like COBOL and other high-level languages, and you modify it, you edit it, you test it, and you put it into production. So you're a real software engineer or programmer. Then there's the sysprog people. They're the people that make the machine work better, more efficiently, work faster, upgrade all the operating system releases and the PDFs that come along, and they're two different camps of people. We rely on the systems programmers to really keep our mainframe holding together. They're the really smart people. I could definitely say that. Our demands increase, folks. We cannot keep up with the demands across all the different companies. Another big milestone is the Master of the Mainframe competition is global. It's something you have to be aware of. It's fun. You can jump in from 12-year-olds to 15-year-olds. Doesn't matter where you come from. You don't need any prior experience. In 2016, we were lucky, sorry Herb, to take first and third place against the in the UK Ireland region, and we're very, very proud of that. But there was more to it than that, folks, and here's the other twist and the trick for mainframe. Because of that, GM won a lot of their contracts, got them to Ireland because they could prove that their people were good at the mainframe and they were responsible and could deliver. So that was a big thing both for our college and massive for the General Motors company who took those places as well. So well done. It's amazing the beauty that can come along accidentally. This is a good story. It's a closure of a company up here in the Northwest, Boston Scientific. They're a medical manufacturing company. Closed down. A number of their people, non-computing people, wanted to get into computing. They wanted to move to the mainframe requirements of the prudential companies. They came in, we trained them in their companies, and they came to the college. They all worked and are currently working very successfully in the mainframe. The profile of people that we're getting into the mainframe and into our courses are you, for example, if you're a third level student or a graduate or somebody wanting to dip your toe in the water here, they're seeking a career in computing. Now, there's no shortage of computing careers, certainly not in Ireland. It's being able to see the mainframe for what it is. That's what we're going to try and achieve here on this morning session, actually. The other two types of profile is we're taking existing non-technical people in companies because they can get them quite easily, but they can't get mainframe people, so they're retraining them, and we train them in all of the mainframe technologies. And finally, the last line, we take existing staff that want accreditation. In other words, for example, we had Allied Irish Banks last year. They with people that were CISPROGs, wonderful people to have in the program because they brought so much to it, and they were able to take my class some nights and give us the CISPROG view of things. And they want a bit of respect for all their 20 and 30 years in the mainframe, and we give them credits and university qualifications, and they seek those, and they are of tremendous use and feed into our mainframe and into all mainframe courses if you're lucky enough to get them. This is kind of the nub of the issue, folks. COBOL, PL1, and KICS, and so many other technologies on the mainframe. They're all words, and they may be words that are new to you, but certainly not COBOL. They're certainly not cool. But businesses don't care about what's cool. I can tell you that because I was an IT manager for well over for 25 of those years, and the MD would bring me into his corner room, his ivory tower. And he said, Michael, I don't care what you do down there. In fact, I don't even know what you do down there. I just want the place to tick over and work. And when I look for things, they're there. So they certainly only care about what works, but not how we do it. And the mainframe, there's nothing more reliable than that. That's why it's called the Z for Z and the Z15 for zero downtime, reliable, etc., etc. What students need to focus on is the high salary, no question about it. You're paid higher because you can't. It's a limited supply. Security, proven by me, I have to say, and anybody that works in the mainframe doesn't leave. And the mainframe is incredibly exciting, and as I said again, you won't leave the mainframe once you get in there because it's an exciting place to be. COBOL, briefly on this one, just before we get started on our mainframe tasks. Yeah, it's everywhere. COBOL is at the ATM, and every time you go in there, it's talking all the way through the layers and through all the tiers right back to a mainframe. That's where the transaction hits the file. It's used 80% of all the financial transactions, all ATM swipes, basically. Tons of commerce transactions, 3 trillion. Tons of lines of code, and I particularly like that last line, that there's 1.5 billion COBOL lines written every year. That shocked me a bit because you tend to think that we now only edit COBOL programs. That means we go into an old program that's been there for a long time and you make changes to it, when in fact companies are telling me no, they're rewriting those programs, they're rewriting the code, they have a chance to move off the mainframe and off the COBOL platform. They're not taking it, they want to stay there, they know the benefits that it offers. So that was interesting. None of those figures reflect what's happening in manufacturing, and remember, you have the General Motors and you have all those big manufacturers throughout the world that are using the mainframes as well. Folks, to do what I'm about to show you, I need the mainframe. I mentioned to you that IBM have given us and supported us with this ZOOS mainframe for so many years. That's what you need to get started. And in steps the Z Systems Europe University System. This is a system located in Montpellier, France, and they allow us access to it on a logical partition, on one of those LPARs, which is a part of that mainframe, has been given to all the universities around the world to help people like me to provide mainframe education. Folks, mainframe is all glossary, it's all words, it's all jargon, and once you get a few of those words, hopefully from today's session, into your head, they'll make a bit more sense. So, folks, The glossary starts now. The first line here is the ISPF, the primary options menu. That's where the mainframe begins whenever you log on to the mainframe. So without further ado, folks, we're going to go through all of these points. The ISPF, that's a menu that greets you whenever you successfully log on to the mainframe. It's like a DOS command. If you don't have a series of menus, you're lost. And the ISPF is the system that you will be greeted by. It's a series of menus. Everything on the mainframe is held in datasets and members. So where we're familiar with windows and folders, think of datasets, and those datasets contain members, and those members you will see shortly. Those are our COBOL programs that reside in the COBOL datasets. COBOL code is, as we'll see shortly, we'll look at our Hello World programs and lots more like it. JCL is the glue that connects everything together on the mainframe. So nothing happens on the mainframe until you submit a JCL job on the mainframe, and that pulls the whole lot together, searches for your COBOL dataset, looks for your member, runs that program, produces the output and sends it off to another subsystem called the SDSF, which is the final word there. So ISPF is where we're going to look at first of all, folks. So to do that, I just need to bring you and welcome you to the mainframe here, folks. Now, this is your log on screen to every mainframe in the world. It looks a bit like this. First thing you'll notice is that you don't know where my cursor is. So you should always control and break, and you should always have your crosswires showing at all times. Your tab key is your friend because your cursor can wander away off. And if you're a mouse person, you'll be pressing stuff here. So tick your tab key, log on, as I'm now going to do. I have my ID. Log on to the mainframe. On our specific configuration, this may not be the same in lots of mainframe shops, but we're given this little menu panel. We can go to a number of different places here, folks. We don't have time to talk about them here or now, but this is because we have a sysplex, which means there's more than one mainframe, which is great for high availability and redundancy and all of those kinds of things. We also have a PF5 here, which is our KICS system as well, and we are going to take a little look at our KICS. KICS is what we refer to as online COBOL. So up to now, you may have heard of the word COBOL, but there's actually two versions of COBOL. There's batch COBOL, which is what the banks will use every night when they run through the hundreds of thousands of banking transactions and move those people off to back in the days when your statement was printed at the end of the month and that was posted out to you. But that overnight job would have been done through a batch COBOL program, whereby the online stuff happens in KICS, and we will have a look at that because you have to see both of them. So the first place I'm going to bring you is my PF2. It's over to my TSO session, and here we go. And folks, when you arrive at the mainframe, you don't arrive here because I already was in here this morning. You will arrive at the all-important ISPF primary options menu. This is your ISPF system talking to you, and you can do everything you want from this position right here. What I want to demonstrate here for the next 5-10 minutes is how easy it is to look at a COBOL program. And you may not have seen a COBOL program before, but the beauty about COBOL is that it's self-readable. You'll quickly, within a few hours, you can easily be writing COBOL programs, fairly basic COBOL programs, I might add. So we're going to try and look at two little types of COBOL program. We'll start off with the Hello World one, then we're going to look at one a little bit more advanced, which will use as files, would you believe it? So before we start, folks, I'm going to bring you into the datasets, and to look at datasets on the mainframe, you use the all-important 3.4, and that is your dataset list utility, and that option 3.4, how you read it is that it's taking option 3 from this primary options menu here, and 3 reads the utilities. So if I take this one slowly, take the 3, press enter, I'm in the utility selection panel. There's lots of options here, many of which I haven't even looked at yet. Don't care about it. I just want the 4, the dataset list. And I take the 4 from here, and in I go. And from here, I can look at all my datasets. You tab down, watch my cursor, the cross wires, and I key in legitimate dataset names. Now, dataset names can be quite funny on the mainframe. We have a naming convention for our college and for our students. In fact, down here, if I just bring you to one of our students here, do that one again, click. Now, one very important key in the mainframe is that because this is the green screen that you've feared all your life, the dumb terminal type emulator, which you download through your Java applets, which IBM give you at the start, you set up this little swap list, it's called. It means that I can have multiple mainframe screens running at the same time. So if I click on SDSF and press enter, I'll go to the SDSF system. Click on the UniLit, I'll go to the UniLit series of data sets, which are all here at the moment. Many data sets, they all have a name, and from the name you can imagine what's in them. There's assembler stuff up there, there's Kick stuff in those data sets, there's DB2 stuff down here, there's Rex shoved down here, there's COBOL, there's JCL, the lot. So, but I have a student environment here set up. This is actually a live student as I speak in my class here, so I hope I don't pop in and upset what he's trying to do. And again, this is the beauty of the mainframe. I can see his work, see what he's doing, see what he's trying to do. Dataset namings are very simple. In here should be your COBOL source code, and I hope he hasn't done the funny here and moved something else in there. Down here he has JCL, so we're going to look at COBOL and JCL right now. We're going to look at a COBOL program, and we'll go in, and there's little commands like V for view, and inside there you'll see the members now showing, and those members belong to the COBOL dataset. So right now, these are all the COBOL programs that this student has worked on or is currently working on. I'll go to the top one here. I will use the V command again, and I can view his COBOL program. Don't worry about the funny colors. These are comment statements and they appear like that. Always nice to comment your programs. COBOL is made up of divisions. Simple as that. Just accept it and run with it, folks. Don't question it. Identification division always tells you what the name of this program is. It tends to be the same name as we call our members. Keep things consistent. And here's the all-important logic. Here is my procedure division, and we are simply just displaying that program. We're displaying, this is my version of the hello world. Welcome to LYIT, blah, 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 a bunch of display statements. So if that's the COBOL code, great. I come out of that, and I will now go into my JCL dataset, which is right here. Again, I'm going to view that JCL dataset. For those of you that have done some programming before, you've done your JGrasp IDEs and all of that, and you can press the buttons at the top, and that's where this isn't that cool, and that's where it does get the bad name. But people actually take to this like a fish to water. They like what they're doing here on the mainframe. Plus, it's good to know these things about the mainframe because the experienced mainframe people and companies respect you greatly when they know that you know your way around ISPF and know where to look at members and you can do things. Now this takes on a whole new meaning now. Here's the 1 and 2 JCL. So I have a naming convention that this is the COBOL program that these 2 JCLs are referring to. The 1 is the compile and link, or where you're going to compile that program. So if I go in and look at that, welcome folks to the wonderful world of JCL. It's right up there. The main operation codes appear in red, the job card, the execute program, and what that execute program needs to run. So example, this is a job. I'm telling the mainframe that I am user LIT0047 because that's what it says there. But even though I'm lip master, but you'll see how that reflects when we look at the output created by this job. So we're about to submit a job on the mainframe, and we're going to execute the IGI, the compile and link, which is the software on the mainframe. So without further ado, SUB is short for submit. You press enter, you key in C for compile, although it won't, and up here it tells you, folks, he's let me down. You've got a big 12 here. He's gone on to my program and done something with it. Great. Let's go down here and we'll just try, what's he at here? This is the danger in running live in my classes. A01, what's he done? Have I messed about here? SUB. That's great. C for compile. Yeah, max 12. That just tells me he's got compile errors. Know what, folks? I'm not going to that user anymore. I'm going to another student. Great. 48. Lots of students out here. Let's go down to his DB2 JCL. See what he's got down here. V for view. He's got an A01 down here as well. The exact same JCL. Let's hope he's done better. SUB. C for compile. Max equal to 0 is always, in other words, this is technical talk. It means the mainframe liked that job. There's no error messages in it. Then it goes to 2. I now want to view this JCL. This will actually execute that COBOL program that I have now successfully created. So here goes. I do a sub for submit. I give it R for run. It's a code that you tell the mainframe about. It says max equal to 0. It means the program has run successfully. To look at your output on the mainframe, you go to this SDSF, which is exactly what we talked about down here at the bottom. This is where all your outputs go. Down here, I click on my swap panels because I've set these swap panels up earlier on and they're very easy to set up. I can show you how that's done. I press enter on SDSF. All of my students' outputs appear right here. They're all appearing from the top. So here, the mainframe tells me who all is logged on to my mainframe at the moment in my class. I look for my students' output and it's right, it'll be the last output that I submitted, which is right down here. Litmaster C and R, there we go, folks. Right down, compile and run. So I look at my output. I use codes question mark to go in and look at my output. And I come down here and look at it. And folks, there is the output to that all-important COBOL program appearing on the SDSF. Now, folks, you may say that that's a lot of heavy work there to find things, but you actually get familiar with your swap panels and being able to jump across from one to the other. Let's see if he's got a C0809100181. Here's another COBOL program down here, C09100181. Let's try this one. If I look at this COBOL program for a second, C09100181, quick peek at this. This is a more advanced COBOL program. This COBOL program uses a file. You can see your source code has got a little bit more complicated, but still has the divisions. Identification division tells you what the program is. This, the environment division, now tells me I'm using two files in this program. I'm using an I for input file, which is going to have a bunch of transactions on it, and it's going to write those input transactions all out to an output report file that we're going to see over on the SDSF system. I then need to tell the mainframe of what the record layout is. For example, the first record will be the employee ID. It'll be 6 bytes long. First name will be 10 bytes long. Some fields appear in X saying they're alphanumeric. Some will appear as nines saying that they're numbers like salary. So this is where we tell our program what the record layout is. And then down here in the working storage, a really important section is where all of our outputs get declared. The headings appear here. The detail lines appear here as shown, and then we have variables being declared in the working storage section, and then we're down to the all-important procedure division. This is where the main logic is, and this is where another tool that I would just like to throw in here, I found this incredibly useful to my students over the years, and that is, let me just locate it as I'm jumping around here. It's my Jackson's structured diagram. Now, you won't really see this. Anybody old enough in the class to remember JSD, that's Jackson's structured diagram? This is pretty much where we send our classes all the time because it's time well worth spending. So I'm going to snip something here so that I can write all over it. So here's me just drawing a line around my snip area so that, folks, Jackson starts up here and it says, then in this program, expect there to be a begin section. So this is the structuring of all software, both in PL1 and COBOL on the mainframe. I've been told by my companies, we still structure all of our programs like Jackson. In other words, look for a begin section, and in that begin section, you're going to see things like your files being opened, all the files, and most common COBOL programs will be using 10 or 20 files. They're really complex code. In this begin section, you'll also see reading from records. They tend to do that in the begin section to make sure that the files are all available and allocated to this job so that there's no files missing and stuff. Good idea. Headings get printed, but then we have the all-important main section here, and there's little symbols. There's an asterisk here saying that in the main part of the program, that's where all the heavy iteration happens. So the loop appears in there, and once the loop ends, and as we read here, this program will continue until we reach the EOF, the end of file of the itrans. So whenever we read the last record in from the itrans file, the program's going to end, and at that it will go to the finish of the program and then close my files down. Those sections all map down here to, and I'm getting very cluttered here, to my procedure division right down here. As you can see, the very first statement in it is perform 100 start, then perform 300 main, and perform 300 end. So you're performing each of these main sections here. So I just wanted to throw in the Jackson's structured design idea to the class here at the moment, while we jump right back in here in our procedure division. That's exactly where you see the structure being mapped out here. You'll see the perform 100 begin. So it goes down to paragraph 100, opens the file, writes those headings out, reads the first record. It's as simple as that, folks. This is readable stuff. It's high-level language at its best, and that's why COBOL has lived the testament of 60 years. But I popped into yesterday's session on that one, and it's alive and well because it's readable and people can program in it very quickly as well, and it lasts forever. So that's with the opening and the writing and the reading happening there, and then the all-important iteration in COBOL happens on the perform a paragraph name until. The until is the key to iteration. So until this becomes true. So it basically says keep doing 200 main process until this flag EOF equals a 1. Flag EOF is a little variable that you have declared at the start of your program right here. You've set it to a value of 0, so it's exactly what you would have thought. That is 0 to begin with, but when that turns to a 1, this iteration will end. When does it get turned to a 1? When I read a record and hit the end of the file, it will move that 1 to flag, therefore my loop will cease. That's COBOL at its best, folks. Simple. Perform that once, perform that many times, and then when that completes, you will get to 300 and finish. Let's see the cause and effect of this particular bit of code here. So if that's the COBOL code, which it is because we're in the COBOL dataset and we've looked at the C09-10181, let's see what this student has done in their JCL. Jump out. C09-10181, that's the compile. The 1 is the compile. You could have put these two together as one piece of JCL. This is easy to do. I encourage students to do that once they get familiar with what the 1 and the 2 is. It's just important to separate out the idea at this point. So that compiles the program. I reckon it's clean, and the 2 is going to run. Now the interesting thing here about 2, and again folks, this is all view mode, so I can do all kinds of silly things here, but it doesn't change this user 48, doesn't change their member in any way at all. The mainframe is a brilliant simulator. I can change all of the information down here, as you will see shortly. But right now, when I submit this job, it's going to execute a COBOL program, a PUGM, equal to C09-10181. That program is going to write stuff out to my system SDSF output area. It's going to need the itrans file to be allocated to this program before it begins. So there should be and must be a file called dataset name lit48 data itrans C09-181. So the actual physical name of the file is there. In fact, if I want to have a quick look at this, so this file is going to be read into this COBOL program. What does this file look like on the mainframe? Up to now, we've talked about the COBOL and the JCL datasets, but look, they are called partitioned datasets. PDS, it's a big word on the mainframe. If I command this, these are partitioned datasets, which means that those datasets contain members, proven by enter V, and I see the members appearing here in a straight line. However, there are other dataset types on the mainframe as well, this being another. It's the SAM. If I try and view this type of dataset, look what happens. This is the data being fed in. So this is a SAM file, a sequential access method file. It's a very open file. It's like a notepad file, .text on your computer, handy for throwing everything into. And it has data on it. So I'm going to now take our little COBOL program and read in each of these lines and write those lines out to the SDSF system down here. So that's our SAM file. That's what the SAM file kind of looks like right there. Let's try and run this little job. So we go down and we go to C09-10182, and again, just to prove it's going to execute our C09-10181 COBOL program. It needs the itrans and it will write the results to the O report. Let's do a sub for submit. An R for run. For God's sake, folks, brilliant. Just when I want the students' work to do, they've got a JCL error. I'm not going to try and sort them out on that one at this stage. So, folks, let's keep trying here. Another user, because all my users use the same naming conventions. See, this is a work in progress, folks, because and some data sets, look, have got many data sets out here from some students are on Kix. They've got lots of data files. Isn't that just a killer there? Let me just see. Let's just go down here. Go put your L in there. So users will make layers of you, don't they? Let's see how 46 is doing. Have they got some good stuff in here? Let's go down to C0910-182 down here and try and do, we can do a sub out here as well. You don't have to actually go into the actual member and look at it. Sub or for run. Max equal to 0. That's good. So it's going to run that program. This is again, what user am I on? 46. So look for 46 out on our SDSF system, right out here. And me being the owner of the job and they having a job number of LIT 46, this is me. I go out, I will question mark. It's a little code that you get familiar with on the SDSF system. I take my cursor down to my O report. I do S for select, and I'm now seeing all of those people appearing out here on the report. That's what I was hoping to find and to see. In fact, JCL is so powerful that again, I'm in view mode here. They're using, this user is using their own file, lit0046. I can very quickly create a bunch more records. I can repeat that, say, 3 times. Even though it tells me down here the data changes will not be saved because I'm in view mode. This is the beauty of the mainframe. I've done the repeat. I now want to go up. What this does, it will concatenate all these files. It'll take their one file and it will read it in 4 times. So now I've got whatever number of records is on the file there. If there's 10 records, now I have 10, 20, 30, 40 records are all going to be fed into this program. It will keep reading this as if it were one big file containing 40 records. A lot of fun. You've great fun with this in the class. Sub it or for run. Max equal to 0 tells me that's fine. This is where the fun is on the mainframe, folks. So easy to play around, have some fun with it, and to jump in and make things happen. So now I want a lot of records to test out my code for whatever reason. And we go in, and now we've got loads and loads of stuff all coming out here, and so on and so forth. So again, just showing you some of the tricks there. Keeping an eye on the clock here, folks. That's COBOL, that's SDSF, that's members that we're looking at here. Alt and 3 is a little hotkey, brings us back to this menu panel here. We have to look at Kix PF5. This is online COBOL. When you enter the Kix system, Kix is run by a 4-digit transaction ID code. So whenever you write your COBOL program and you write your physical maps and you compile them all together, then you tell your Kix system that I have a new COBOL program and a new physical map, and I want you to call it LMC1. So it's a 4-digit transaction ID code. It's the way Kix works. You can bury that into a menu option if you want to keep that obviously away from the users, because you wouldn't want them knowing those kind of codes. We'd keep it nice and user friendly for them. You key in a code, welcome to online COBOL. So now the batch part's gone. We're now looking at the live running of a COBOL online program. So I'm in this program called inventory menu. That's the COBOL menu name, and these are the principles of Kix. Your COBOL program name should appear at the top. The code, the Kix transaction ID code that allowed you in here is LMC1, great. And the physical map, which is exactly what we're seeing here, folks. This is what we call the physical map of a real Kix program. You write this physical map as a separate code. It's kind of looks like macros. Some books call it assembler language, but it's definitely not assembler. But you write the physical map first of all, which allows you to test out the physical characteristics of what this screen does. For example, it's got this writing at the top line, it's got this writing here, these actions appear like so. So now to run this, you simply bring your cursor down, give it a 1, press enter, customer number 00001, that's me, and up comes Michael Carey. So this online COBOL program has gone out to the file, looked for that record and read that record in from a VSAM type file. And again, there's lots of file types on the mainframe, from SAMs to VSAMs. The coding behind that is very interesting, slightly different to your batch programming, but again, it's live. I can come out of here, look at a second record. Here we are. Matt Malloy, great flute player in Ireland, played with a lot of Irish music in the great band called the Bothy band. So again, the customers are there. My codes all work down here, F3 and F12, to exit from this panel. I go back one, I can maintain a customer, I can create new customers, I can enter in orders, I can do all kinds of things. Kix is a fabulous system in that it uses so little bandwidth, and that was one of the wonderful successes of Kix back in the 1970s and 80s. It ran companies all over the world, from airline reservation systems. I still see it being used in the blood transfusion system in Ireland, and in Dunn stores, or chain of Dunn stores. They also use these screens. I see them shooting up whenever I'm doing some long online orders and I go in to collect them. So they're still used everywhere, but you don't actually realize that. So Kix programs, Alt and 3, they're kind of a different beast. So I leave the Kix system, which is now telling me it's active. I jump to PF2, and I can go and have a look at Kix. Is Kix out here anywhere? In fact, I just left a Kix panel there today. We're down here, Kix. What does Kix actually look like? I talked about a physical map there a moment ago, and it looks a bit like this. So the physical map that created that little Kix program here, if I just bring you back to it again, PF5, the master menu, master menu, and all the options here, that looks like Alt and 3. I toggle across to my source code, and somewhere down here we're going to see all those things happening. There's the initial master menu. This is the code. It's made up of DFH macros. There's nothing really to that. There's 3 macros in it. There's the one that you lead into and you tell the program all about. There's one of the MSDs, the map set definition. Then you basically tell it what line and what position do you want these characters all to appear out on. And then you have the all-important COBOL source code that you run that uses that physical map. And here's, again, COBOL coming up here with all the important divisions, as you're familiar with. And down here in the procedure division, we have the idea of the conversational versus pseudo-conversational mode on the mainframe. It's to do with how do you actually control the workings of this kick screen here. And again, we wander our way through all of that there, and we have a lot of fun trying to figure out what point do I output and display this physical map for the user. Then when the user takes a 1 in, or it could be a 2 or a 3, what happens to my program? And the code of my COBOL program basically looks for the input code. If you're a 1, the COBOL program sends you off to the 1 area. If you're a 2, it'll send you off to the 2 area. Very easy, very straightforward to get your head around. But what is a great challenge for the students is the fact that there's a physical map and there is the actual COBOL code itself. This is the code that handles it if the user presses any kind of key at all. The beautiful thing about Kix and pseudo-conversational is, if you think of it, folks, for a moment, if that person's running that program and they go for a tea break for an hour, the mainframe drops all that code out of the RAM, the main memory of the mainframe. It ties up no resources at all. The CPU doesn't have to worry about it. There's no MIPS running, and the program basically leaves RAM, go to sleep. There's a minimum amount of code left in a very important place, so that when the user comes back and presses any key on their keyboard, the program wakens up and it's brought back into the RAM again. It is highly intelligent and well ahead of its time, and this all happened about 50 years ago, folks. So it was a great use of resources on the mainframe, because as we all know, we all go for tea breaks in the middle of programs, and what happens to your program then? Well, the pseudo-conversational is the one. When they press the enter key right down here, DF enter, they perform process the menu map, and down you go, and you go down to 1000, and all the paragraphs are all sequenced, so it's easy to find out where the sequencing all is. But COBOL, there's nothing in it, folks. It's very, very straightforward. Are we starting to cover things? We've certainly talked about ISPF. We've talked about datasets and members. That was our COBOL and our dataset. We've submitted jobs. We've looked at some COBOL code in its merit, and we've looked at some complex code, and we've certainly looked at some Kix as well, which wasn't planned for. JCL is the glue. JCL is nothing to be worried about in any way, folks. And that I don't even know much about JCL, because I don't actually need to know about JCL. I got very good advice a couple of years ago from the SysProg, and they said, you remember your wife's birthday? your kids' birthdays, but when it comes to understanding JCL and everything about a mainframe, forget it. You jump into a big red book or you jump out to Google and you go out and you find out what all these statements mean. These statements basically run these parameters appearing to the right of it. These parameters are very straightforward. You learn what they all mean. You grab a book and see what class A is and message class equal to H. The notify tells me that whoever submits this job, they will be notified of the results of this job. So this is a system parameter. It's got an ampersand on the front of it. So it says whoever submits this job, they will be notified, which is exactly why when I submit this job, even though it's for another user, I am going to be notified about its result. And yes, I am. This is the notification on the mainframe. It's done right there, max equal to 0. I'm conscious of the time, folks, here as well. And there is one little thing I would love to have a go at here, and that is we've basically had a look at the ISPF, the menus, the datasets, the members, running jobs, doing things on the mainframe, looking at COBOL, having a look at JCL and SDSF, where the outputs all happen. We certainly jumped in there, folks. On the mainframe, it's moved on, folks, to a very cool environment. I'm going to try and demonstrate this. I've got a virtual machine here on my PC. It is problematic, this stuff, folks. It's heavy on resources, and I know I'm running a video here and it's being recorded, and it can always give problems. Oh, good. It disappeared on me altogether. That's a great problem. Back we go. So where's my environment, folks? It's gone to a different screen here, so I need to drag this over so that the class can see it. Here we are. This is my PC, sort of my virtual machine. My passwords, you'll never guess, mainframe. Press enter. It didn't work, so better try that one again. Mainframe. Logging on this virtual machine. Okay, that's very good. Active. Now, I don't know what that means. Ask me later. Right, I'll cancel that. Okay, this environment comes up. I'm going to run a little piece of software. I hope it runs. It's stored in my resources. Would you believe it? I'll try running it. Yeah, I'll try it. It's called ZOS Explorer. It's the JGrasp version of the mainframe. It's very cool. So it is. And I need to be able to show it to you. I know it's close on 10 minutes to 10 here, but this is the mainframe becoming cool and becoming a very modern interactive development environment, just like the days that I taught Java in my classes, where you had your data sets to the left and your code open to the right. It takes a while for this just to crank up this virtual environment. It'll kick in shortly, but it's your IDE version. It'll show you your members all open up. You can run jobs. Now it's building up. There's certain stuff happening here in the background. I'm not a technical person because I don't need to be, but it's loading up this Aqua version. The reason that I'm able to show this is that because we're using the IBM ZOOS mainframe, we can't load up any third-party software. And it's a question that I have been asking people over the conference, is that can we get the likes of Zoe to work on ZOOS? And that'd be nice to be able to show the student what the environment is that they will be working on. But this is what it opens up as, folks. If I want to log on to the mainframe, which I must do first of all, I click here, I click connect, just like you would. You saw me doing earlier on, key in my password. Could save it, but I always like to do it the long way. And I'm on the mainframe. I can look at all kinds of things here. Here's user 48. Now their data sets are all appearing here. I can key in data sets. There's data sets for 58. Don't know who they are. Down here, they've got JCL. It's fetching their members. I can look at their JCL. There's a C09100181. Double click on it. It opens up here beautifully in the middle panel. I can see their code. That's exactly LIT58. That would be the same as me out here on the mainframe going to LIT58. Down here, LIT0058, and looking at all of their data sets like so. I'm seeing broadcast, all of their stuff there. That's precisely what we're seeing here. In fact, I've gone into their JCL data set, so let's just go to the JCL one here and stay with it. And that's exactly what they're seeing out here. All the members are appearing. I can go along and run one of these outputs. Here we are. Take this first one. Here's the 2. I can right click. I can say submit ZOS job, and it says perform that submit operation. So this is the beautiful 21st century mainframe has arrived, folks. This is one version of it. It's called ZOS Explorer. Zoe, I believe, and all these really cool modern tools I'm learning this week from those, they all seem to be doing something similar to this. And I asked the question, are they going to replace ZOS Explorer or IDZ or Rational Development for System Z? And I'm being told, no, they won't. I can check down here at the bottom part, the output from that program, and it's fetching it. And here it is, sysout. And here is the output to the program. So that's it right down there. That's the output from the Hello World program. Where is their Hello World program? It's their COBOL. If I find their COBOL, it's up here. Fetch their COBOL. It's their output A010001. So open up that. So now I have two little tabs here. One is the COBOL program now showing. Here we are, where I say procedure division, display all of these things, and that's exactly what we're seeing down here, folks. That's the display. It's all working. The IDE is extremely cool, folks. So, folks, the extras for me, if I could call them extras, if it's going back, are ZOS Explorer free. It's free for me anyway. You download it, you can play about with that there, and you can use, my students find that they're more efficient in companies. If you join a company, you may not actually see too much of the green screen, folks. They'll be pushing you in the direction of Zoe and ZOS Explorer because you're more efficient and you're more effective by using these wonderful tools that are now available to us. It's nice to appreciate the two different technologies, and the old mainframe people that you go to work with in companies are the ones that are going to train you. They love the fact that you can navigate your way around ISPF and the green screen and the dumb terminal. Look out for Zoe in this conference, and your companies will be forcing you in those directions. Rational Development for System Z did get launched a few years ago. It got rebadged as IDZ, and they're all doing the same thing as you've seen there on my ZOS Explorer. Folks, without further ado, I'm conscious of the time. Folks, I can gladly say that I'm a happy person. I've had a wonderful life in mainframe. It's just been getting better. Too bad for all those 45 computing lecturers in the college that turned their nose up at the mainframe and gave me this wonderful opportunity of winning competitions, supplying something that's a unique resource to companies, and it's only going to get better, folks. It's all that I can say. I would say I do have mainframeitis. I just think mainframe. I'm sorry I left it for the intervening years in between, but it's something that I had to do, and no regrets. But I'm back on the mainframe. I'm there to stay. I just like doing what I'm currently doing. So, folks, I have said a lot in this talk, and I don't want to take up too much time on it, other than to say, folks, your reflection would be important to me and for the course organizers as well. I've never presented in the GSC before. I was humbled by being asked to do this, and I want to thank Herb Daly for doing this. Herb works in the Wolverhampton University, and he and I are great friends. We met in Hursley back many years ago, and we drove up to Cockfosters in London, and we had a great conversation, and we've been friends ever since. He's been a great guy. He's Mr. Mainframe Education in the UK. I can't thank him enough, and thank Herb and for Paul Fairborn. And by the way, that was Paul's picture back earlier on there, in case some of you don't know what Paul looks like. He looks like that fella there with a cheesy smile there and a blue suit in the front row. I'm this fella that's wearing this thing called a tie on my neck. I obviously got the dress code very poorly wrong there. So Paul, it's over to you, and thank you everybody, but do the reflection please and the course feedback. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
That's great, Michael. Many thanks. That was your enthusiasm for the mainframe is infectious as always. So thank you for your time there. I've just checked to see whether there's any questions. None have come through because I think it was just very clear what you actually covered. And just as you can see, just thank you from people who've attended. So from my point of view, just a reminder really to provide feedback to Michael on what you've seen. If you want to access or review the content again, it has been recorded and will be available after the conference is finished. So for me, it's just a chance to say to Michael, many thanks for taking your time to do this today. It was incredibly informative, and I think it's a really useful asset you've created here. So thank you.